There is a sequence, 3 strikes, 3 targets, executed in deliberate order over 5 days, that the IRGC Aerospace Force carried out against America's missile defense architecture in the Gulf, and understanding the sequence tells you more about who is winning this war than any missile count, any casualty figure, or any Trump Truth social post. The sequence is this. First, the AN FPS 132 Block 5, upgraded early warning radar at Qatar's Al Udeid complex, the $1.1 billion system that provides 5,000-kilometer detection range, the system that sees everything coming from Iran before any interceptor battery can engage it. Destroyed. Second, the AN-TPY-2 tracking and fire control radar at Al Ruwais base in the UAE, the dedicated Tha'adi radar that provides the precise targeting data without which a Tha'ad launcher is operationally blind. Without the radar, the launcher cannot engage with accuracy. The system is rendered inert. Destroyed. Third, the Tha'ad battery itself, the $1 billion to $1.8 billion interceptor system that America operates directly with American personnel, that uses kinetic kill vehicles traveling at Mach 8 to destroy incoming ballistic missiles in their terminal phase. The IRGC's sequencing, first degrading long-range early warning in Qatar, then targeting theater-level radar in the UAE, followed by the interceptor battery itself, suggests a deliberate operational design aimed at collapsing multiple defensive layers in a cascading manner. Such sequencing implies advanced target intelligence, persistent surveillance, and calibrated strike planning that prioritized sensor nodes before kinetic interceptors, reflecting a systems-level approach to dismantling missile defense rather than striking individual platforms. Systems-level approach, not opportunistic targeting of visible military hardware. A deliberate 3-step sequence executed across 5 days designed to dismantle the missile defense architecture from the outside in. First, blind the early warning system so defenders cannot see what is coming, then destroy the fire control radar so the interceptor battery cannot aim accurately, then destroy the battery itself with whatever interceptors and drones remain in the network's depleted stockpile. The IRGC did not need to fire at the THAAD battery on day 1. It waited until the radar was gone, because a THAAD battery without its radar is a billion-dollar collection of metal sitting in the desert, unable to engage any target. At current production rates, replacing 150 THAAD interceptors would take over 12 years. The U.S. received just 12 new THAAD rounds in the 2026 fiscal year. Even with RTX's planned production surge and Lockheed Martin's target of 650 PASI-3 MSE units per year by 2027, full replenishment of the stockpiles being consumed in this conflict would take years. 12 years. To replace the interceptors being consumed in a war that Trump says could last 4 to 5 weeks. America received 12 new THAAD rounds in the entire 2026 fiscal year. The UAE alone intercepted 645 drones in 5 days, each requiring 1 missile to stop. The production arithmetic is not a future planning problem. It is a present operational crisis. And the THAAD battery that is no longer functional in the Gulf is a battery that cannot be replaced by the time any foreseeable phase of this war is over. The source document today identifies the single economic mechanism that explains why a $35,000 Iranian drone is more strategically consequential than any fighter jet, any warship, or any B-2 stealth bomber in America's arsenal. And understanding this mechanism explains why China is watching every interceptor fired over the Gulf with more strategic attention than any other country on Earth. Iran deliberately mixes cheap Shahed drones with expensive ballistic missiles in the same salvos. Defenders cannot distinguish between a $35,000 drone and a ballistic missile carrying a much larger warhead until the threat is classified by radar, and classification takes time that may not be available. The safe default is to engage every incoming object with a capable interceptor, which means expensive missiles get fired at cheap targets. The safe default is to engage everything. That is the operational instruction that every Patriot battery operator, every THAAD crew, every Naval Aegis system aboard every destroyer in the Gulf is following right now. When you cannot tell the difference between a $35,000 drone and a ballistic missile carrying a warhead that could kill hundreds of people, you fire the interceptor every time. Because the cost of not firing, the cost of guessing wrong and letting the ballistic missile through, is catastrophically higher than the cost of firing a $4 million interceptor at a $35,000 drone. Iran built its salvo doctrine around that calculation. Every mixed salvo is not just an attack. It is a billing mechanism, a systematic method of forcing America and its allies to spend $4 million defending against a $35,000 expenditure 114 times per day, every day the war continues. The June 2025 Israel-Iran war exposed a stark cost exchange dilemma. Iran launched 574 medium-range ballistic missiles over 12 days at an estimated total cost of $6.6 billion. By contrast, the U.S. alone expended 92 THAAD interceptors, costing roughly $12.7 million each, or about $1.17 billion in total, representing roughly 14% of its stockpile. Combined with Israel, interceptor spending reached an estimated $1.58 billion. Iran spent between $1.1 and $6.6 billion on offense. America and Israel spent $1.48 to $1.58 billion on defense, just in interceptors, not counting the operational costs of the carrier groups, the B-2 sorties, the logistics, the fuel, the personnel. And that was the June 2025 12-day war. The current war is on day 5. It is covering 11 countries simultaneously. It has already produced more total intercepts in 5 days than the entire June 2025 conflict produced in 12. China is closely watching as U.S. missile stocks drain over Iran, calculating the implications for a potential Taiwan contingency. Every THAAD and SM-3 interceptor expended in the Middle East is one that cannot be forward deployed to the Western Pacific. Iran's drone campaign may be imposing costs not only on Gulf state air defenses, but on American deterrence posture in the Indo-Pacific. A second-order effect that Tehran may well have intended. The Asia Times analyst is describing a strategic dimension of this war that no American official has yet addressed publicly, the Taiwan dimension. Every THAAD interceptor fired over Qatar or the UAE or Kuwait is an interceptor that is not in a magazine aboard a destroyer in the South China Sea. Every PAC-3 missile consumed defending Al Udeid is a PAC-3 that is not available for the scenario China's military has been studying and preparing for since 2020. America's deterrence posture in the Pacific depends on the same interceptor stockpile that Iran is systematically depleting in the Gulf. And China is watching, calculating, measuring every salvo's cost against the cumulative depletion of the stocks that would need to be forward deployed to the Western Pacific for any Taiwan contingency to be credible. A January 2026 Heritage Foundation report warns that high-end interceptors such as SM-3, SM-6, PAS-3 MSE, and THAAD would likely be exhausted within days of sustained combat, with some systems depleted after just 2 to 3 major PLA salvos. The report says that aggregate U.S. vertical launch system inventories at an estimated 17,000 rounds are insufficient for even one full fleet reload, and peer-side rearming creates multi-week gaps, risking systemic failure within 30 to 60 days. That is the Heritage Foundation's assessment, published in January 2026, 1 month before Operation Epic Fury launched, of how long America's combined interceptor stockpiles could sustain combat operations against a major adversary. The report was written with a PLA-Taiwan scenario in mind. It is now being tested in real time against Iran. And Day 5 of the test has already destroyed a THAAD battery, depleted multiple Patriot magazines across 6 countries, consumed 645 UAE interceptors, and produced a logistics crisis that the Pentagon told Trump requires ending the war fast. There is a number, published by Lockheed Martin in its 2025 annual report, and cited in every defense procurement briefing in every NATO capital since the June 2025 war, that defines the boundary between the world America thinks it inhabits and the world the THAAD destruction confirms it actually inhabits. The number is 650. That is America's total THAAD interceptor stockpile, accumulated across 15 years of production at a rate of roughly 40 to 50 rounds per year, at a cost of approximately $12.7 million per interceptor. 650 interceptors. The entire reserve, the entire backstop. The entire quantity of America's most sophisticated terminal phase ballistic missile defense capability, built and stored and maintained across 15 years of procurement, available right now, today, to defend America and its allies against every ballistic missile threat in every theater simultaneously. During Israel's 12-day war with Iran in June last year, the U.S. blew through about a quarter of its THAAD missile interceptors. The U.S. has 7 THAAD systems and used 2 of them in Israel during the conflict. After the 12-day war, U.S. officials reported that they had to fire more than 150 of these missiles to intercept incoming Iranian missiles, accounting for about 25% of its THAAD interceptors, 25% of the entire THAAD stockpile. In 12 days, defending one country in a war that ended in a ceasefire. Now add 1 full THAAD battery confirmed destroyed in the current war, meaning not just the interceptors, but the radar. Hand launcher and fire control system, the complete $1 to $1.8 billion installation that America operates directly with American personnel, is no longer functional. Add the current war covering 11 countries simultaneously. Add the The current war on day 5, with Trump saying it could last 4 to 5 weeks. Add the Heritage Foundation's modeling of systemic failure within 30 to 60 days. Add 12 new THAAD rounds received by the U.S. in the entire 2026 fiscal year. The petrodollar dimension that the source document identifies is the one systemic consequence that connects the THAAD destruction to the global financial architecture that underpins American power in ways no missile can directly reach. The Pentagon has not published the total cost of the operation, and so we can only speculate. But there are a lot of moving pieces. The cost of individual weapons, the cost of naval operations, the logistics chain. The Pentagon has not published the total cost, 5 days in, with 2 carrier strike groups, B-2 sorties, THAAD and Patriot consumption, Tomahawk launches from Arleigh Burke destroyers, fuel costs, personnel costs, logistics costs, and now the replacement cost of a destroyed $1 billion THAAD battery that will take years to rebuild and cannot be replaced in the time frame of any phase of this war. The Pentagon has not published the total cost. Because the total cost published would produce a market reaction, a congressional reaction, and a public reaction that Trump cannot manage while simultaneously telling the New York Post the war could last 4 to 5 weeks. What is known: Tomahawk cruise missiles cost approximately $2 million each. America's Arleigh Burke destroyers carry up to 96. Multiple destroyers have been firing them since day one. THAAD interceptors cost $12.7 million each. PAXI-3 MSE interceptors cost $4 million each. SM-3 and SM-6 ship-based interceptors cost between $4 and $27 million each. The UAE alone intercepted 645 drones and 169 missiles. Every interception has a cost. Every cost comes from a finite stockpile. Every stockpile depletion takes years to replenish at current production rates. And Trump says the war could last 4 to 5 weeks. The THAAD battery that is no longer functional in the Gulf was operated by American personnel. The 95 soldiers that a standard THAAD battery comprises. The radar operators and launch crews and fire control specialists who are running the system that Iran's 3-step sequencing targeted, blinded, and destroyed. Those 95 Americans are now managing hardware that cannot engage any target. The radar is gone. The fire control data is unavailable. The interceptors and the launchers are rounds in a weapon that cannot aim. The Gulf's architecture of American guaranteed security. The architecture that Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain paid for in bases and basing rights and procurement contracts and political alignment with Washington across 30 years, rested on the assumption that American systems could not be destroyed, that the THAAD was invulnerable, that the radar that fed it was too well protected to reach, that America's layered defense, early warning, then tracking radar, then THAAD, then Patriot, then naval Aegis, was deep enough that Iran's weapons could not penetrate to the core. 3 strikes, 5 days. The core is gone. Share this video to every contact you have right now. Iran destroyed a second American THAAD battery in 3 deliberate steps. First the early warning radar, then the fire control radar, then the launcher itself. America has 650 THAAD interceptors total. It used 25% in the June 2025 12-day war alone. It received 12 new ones in all of 2026. Replacing 150 takes over 12 years. China is watching every interceptor consumed, calculating Taiwan. And the Heritage Foundation said systemic failure comes in 30 to 60 days. Day 5, the core is gone.